Hi, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm your host, Anthony Pastore. This week, UBS released the results of our latest quarterly investor sentiment research, a global survey of 4,000 high net worth investors and business owners. Here to discuss the findings with me today are Tom Naradel, President of UBS Americas and Co-President of UBS Global Wealth Management, and Nadia Lovell, Senior U.S. Equity Strategist in the Chief Investment Office. It's good to see both of you, Nadia and Tom. Thanks for joining. Yeah, good to see you. So we have a lot to get to as far as the results, but I'm really excited to start to talk about that with both of you. So Tom, let me ask you first. Clearly, we can't talk about the latest quarter without discussing volatility. It's one of the hottest topics that's happening right now in our world. Between that, inflation, and all the the hot news items that are happening that investors seem to be concerned about. But we can see in the latest research that investor optimism globally declined a little bit this past quarter. So what do you think is worrying them right now, and do you think that their concerns are justified here?
Well, it's certainly an uncertain time. You've got still war in Ukraine. You've got inflation. Consumers are really feeling that. Investors are really feeling that inflation coming through. There's uncertainty about what happens as central banks are tightening. Are they going to tighten too much, and then are we going to see recession? So there are multiple things going on, and then throw on top of that, for those in the U.S., we've got midterm elections coming up. So there's a lot going on. Not surprisingly, optimism declined during the quarter. I think what's important for us to recognize, though, it's a decline in optimism, not a sign of panic. So we do see cash levels rising. We do see investors looking for entry points. You do see investors saying, with regard to public equity markets, if they were to see a decline of 10% or more, they are willing to begin to add to their exposure in equities. So that's something to be a little bit more optimistic about. The other thing I think that's really critical is investors recognize that because it's a challenging time, they're more open to advice than they've ever been. 86% of investors say receiving expert guidance is particularly important now with the uncertainties in the market and also the market volatility that we're seeing.
Right. Thank you, Tom. Interestingly, also, when you look at the top concerns, recession made the list this time around. Probably not surprising for anybody who's been paying attention, but certainly compared to the last quarter, that wasn't even a question. But that was a really good sense of the backdrop, Tom. Thank you for that. So, Nadia, good to see you again. It's love having you on for this discussion. I thought maybe you could talk to what you're seeing are some of perhaps the biggest barriers to investing right now. Clearly, with the volatility, fears of recession, inflation, there seem to be a lot. So what are you thinking there, and what are you thinking investors see as these barriers?
Yes, Anthony. So we're seeing a combination of economic and emotional barriers to enter in the market. Many of the economic barriers are some of the things that Tom just touched upon. So high inflation, high interest rates as the Federal Reserve tightens monetary policy, global growth slowing, global instability, and outright fears of recession. A lot of this is also colluding to contribute to increased market volatility. And so you're also seeing this all together come in to also lead to some emotional barriers. Investors right now are a bit paralyzed. In fact, what we're seeing is that 69% of them aren't sure where to invest right now. Also, 73% of them are just fearful of making a wrong decision here.
And it's interesting when you talk about it that way, Nadia. It's not. I don't think it's surprising, or it's certainly not to us, but perhaps to someone watching today. So, what would you say as a segue to that? Where are some of the investment opportunities that exist in this inflationary environment that we're in, with all of the volatility that we can expect?
Investors are worried right now for a lot of reasons, and that's rightfully so. The volatility has made it feel like sometimes you're on this roller coaster and being whipsaw. But I think, as Tom noted, this is also an environment where it becomes particularly important and more valuable to have a trusted and experienced financial advisor and money managers that can really help you to navigate this market and help investors to stay on course to meet their liquidity needs and longer-term goals. In my recent conversations with clients, investors also recognize that there is opportunities in this volatile market, and volatility can be used as an opportunity. When you think about it, it is a backdrop such as this where you have valuations that have corrected, moved lower, sentiment that is poor, that also sets up for a good investment backdrop. And so how should investors really position in this market? When we think about it, we would be encouraging investors to really manage risk. One of the ways to do that is to invest in areas of the market that are less sensitive to the economic cycle.
Right.
So areas like healthcare, areas like quality income stocks, resilient credit, as well as high-grade bonds. We would also recommend investors to really invest in value, because when you look at the historical data, value tends to outperform in periods of high inflation. So areas like the energy sector, as well as value markets like the UK and Australia. And lastly, Anthony, invest in longer-term opportunities by taking advantage of select beaten down stocks, and also get an exposure to companies that have exposure to some of those longer-term secular themes that we've been talking about. I would highlight robotics and automation, also energy efficiency, also agricultural yields, as well as security and safety. So, Anthony, while at times it might feel a little uncomfortable in this volatility, there's still opportunities to be had.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you look at the research in the latest survey, investors are seeking opportunities, and 30% would increase investments if it declines, if the market declines by 10%, and 56% would keep it the same. Only 14% said they would decrease. So people are looking for opportunities. So I'm glad you were able to highlight those for us, Nadia. Tom, I always love to talk about the business owners section of the research survey as well. And business owner optimism did rebound after its decline last quarter, but they're clearly facing a tough and economic cycle. So what were some of the highlights you pulled from the survey that you're seeing from business owners?
Yeah, so Anthony, I think it's important to characterize the business owners as optimistic, but also realistic. So optimism did bump up to 73%. That's a positive. In particular, something that it's really important to note: net hiring continues to hold very steady, which means far more business owners are thinking about hiring more than hiring less. So underlying some good optimism, at the same time, they're making investments. Now, let's go to the realistic side. Business owners are feeling cost concerns out there. The input prices that they have, if they're in a service business, the cost of labor. If they're in a materials business, those rising materials costs. They see inflation coming in. Now, they're not absorbing that by reducing their profit margins. They are passing along those cost increases. Slightly less than half have already passed on cost increases to their customers already. And again, just about a little bit less than half are looking to put through additional cost increases in the future. So it looks like the profit margins for business owners are going to be holding up pretty well. In the next 6 months, what are they focusing on? They're focusing on increasing their cash reserves. So a little bit, we've been talking about a possibility, a risk of recession. So they're clearly preparing for that. They are looking at identifying and hiring new employees. So again, in line with what we heard about increasing exposure there. And they're also looking at maybe trying to diversify and identify some new supply chain options. So overall, as I said, realistic and optimistic. I think maybe one of the most interesting things with all these challenges out there, what are we going to see? Are we going to see a big burst of innovation coming from business owners in the course of the next few quarters, in the course of the next few years? So our business owners are resilient, key part of the economy. Let's keep an eye on them.
Yeah, I love the last part that you were just referring to, Tom. The fact that the business owners are looking to hire and identify new employees, and even innovatively looking for different access to different supply chain or different options within the supply chain market. That's exciting, and to see that business owners have that optimism to keep moving forward and increasing those cash reserves should feel good about the position ahead. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Thank you both for joining me. It's always really good to dig into this data. and to hear from, as we said, 4,000 global high net worth investors. We'll look forward to the next time. So good. Tom, Nadia, great to have you.
Be here.
Great. And for all those of you who would like to view the full report, you can find it on this website, which is coming up on your screen, ubs.com/investor-sentiment. The full global report is up there for you to take a look at. And there will be more information on the investor sentiment survey on social media, so you can check out Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Plus, for UBS Trending episodes, of course, this is a UBS Trending you're watching right now, you can take a look on demand for all of our past episodes, as well as on our website and on the UBS YouTube channel. And as always, if you do have any questions about anything that Tom and Nadia and I spoke about today, make sure to reach out to your financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. We hope you have a fantastic day, everyone. And remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. We'll see you soon. Thanks.